Thank you so much, Marcia. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelvin Droegemeier. I'm a professor of atmospheric sciences at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and also special advisor to the Chancellor for Science and Policy. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Really appreciate you all coming to join us today. I would be absolutely remiss if I did not acknowledge this extraordinary leader that we have in Marcia McNutt as president of the National Academy of Sciences. I got to know Marcia when we served together many years ago on an NSF advisory committee, and I've watched her with her extraordinary skill, her vision, her passion for science, and the great support and wonderful ideas that she brings forward that are really practical and implementable. And so I really am so grateful to her. And in fact, working with her, Dr. Victor Zhao, also Dr. John Anderson, the presidents of the National Academies of Medicine and also Engineering, we worked closely together during the pandemic. And I cannot tell you that there were any better partners that I had when I was in the White House. I had the privilege of serving as the director of the Office of Science, Technology, Policy, and Science Advisor to the President during those very interesting 2 years from 2019 to 2021 during the pandemic. I can tell you that they worked tirelessly, as did many other people, to help us deal with that tremendous global crisis. So, Marcia, thank you. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, John, for your tremendous work. Really appreciate it. I was very interested in Marcia's talk. It was fascinating, and we've just learned a huge amount of information, very compelling information about challenges, but also opportunities that are before us here. And as a meteorologist, I can tell you I was fascinated especially by the predictions, the forecasts, but also the forecast verification, which if you're in my line of work, you don't like to look at typically very often, because unless you have a coin or a whole pocket full of coins, but some of those predictions were interesting, but some of the verifications were quite troubling and quite challenging for us. I really appreciate you all being here today to spend part of your day on this very important event, the State of the Science. This is only the second year that this has happened. If Marcia were a TV celebrity, the Nielsen ratings would be off the charts right now, right? The second year she's got a captive audience of thousands of people. And it reflects really the importance of this topic and her ability, I think, uniquely to deliver the information in a very processable way and a very accessible way for all of us, which is really extraordinary. So I'm really excited today to have an amazing panel of experts from industry, from research, from academia, to join us here to talk about some of the challenges that we face as a nation. But because by coming together, as Marcia has said, by working together, all hands on deck, we're all about the future of American science and technology. We want to lead the world. And some of the challenges that we saw there today suggest very clearly that that leadership is not only slipping away, but in many cases has already slipped away. So I would like to invite the panel members to join me up here on the stage. Dr. Heather Wilson, Dr. Lynn Parker, Dr. Tsu-Jae Liu, and then Michael Crow is going to be joining us virtually there on the right, and we're going to have a very vibrant discussion about this wonderful State of the Science address, and we look forward to the panel. So please join me, if you would, in welcoming the panel members. Michael, we have you on screen, so welcome to you as well. Great to have you here.
Nice to see you, Kelvin.
Really appreciate it. We've heard just an amazing array of facts and figures and challenges and opportunities that Marcia so beautifully laid out. And I'd like to ask each panelist to basically start by taking a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they are working on today that is most interesting to them, most challenging perhaps. And really, you know, you've been invited to be here today, and we're so grateful to have you here. But tell us a little bit about what motivated you to say yes, because you're all extremely busy, and yet you took time out of your day to think hard about the challenges we face and to share your time with us. So you want to start with you, Heather?
Certainly. I'm Heather Wilson. I served in the United States Congress for 10 years. I was Secretary of the Air Force from 2017 to 2019, and I'm now the President of the University of Texas at El Paso. I also serve on the National Science Board that oversees the National Science Foundation. So what am I working on that's interesting? Well, a couple of things. One of them is the state of Texas is reestablishing mining engineering as a degree at the University of Texas at El Paso. And the way that Texas does things, nothing is small. And so the nation is desperately short of mining engineers and research on mining. And so there are about 300 mining engineers undergraduate who graduate every year in America. And when our program is up and running, that'll be increased to 400 because 100 of them will come from the University of Texas at El Paso. So excited about that. The other thing that I'm working on, there's plenty of challenges in the world, Kelvin, but one of them, and we didn't talk about it entirely here, at least in the way that I look at it, I'm very concerned actually about the reconciliation bill, not just on some of the things that have been discussed publicly, but its impact on Pell Grants, and particularly for the lowest income students. Talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And I'm afraid that some of the provisions that are going to change Pell Grants, particularly if it happens very rapidly, will have a disproportionate impact on the lowest income American students. And we have to keep that pathway open for the next generation of talent.
Thank you so much, Heather. I had the privilege of working with Heather when I was in the White House, and she's extraordinary, as she said, served in Congress, and visiting UTEP, it's an amazing place, and they're so fortunate to have you as their president. So thank you so much for joining us today, Heather. Lynne Parker, I had the great privilege of working with Lynne, who's a powerhouse researcher, a brilliant person when it comes to policy when I was at OSTP. So Lynne, let's hear from you next.
Thanks, Kelvin. So good afternoon. I'm Lynne Parker. I'm Principal Deputy Director at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I come with a long history from academia, the University of Tennessee, where I was a faculty member and administrator for many years. Artificial intelligence and robotics is my research area that I've worked in for many years. Prior to that, I had a number of years that I worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, also doing similar kinds of research. And in the process, while I was at the university, had the opportunity to work a couple of years at the National Science Foundation as a division director of IIS. I am working on lots of really amazing things. I think it's exciting to be able to work on policies for the nation. Obviously, these are very challenging times. There are many kinds of goals and activities that we have to get a handle on. And so it's exciting to be able to contribute to that in some way to help the nation move forward. I'm here, obviously, Kelvin, because you're the moderator. We work together. No, that's a joke. I'm here because I very much believe in science. I believe in the importance of science to foundational science that leads to innovations that we all benefit from. As a long-term AI researcher, clearly today AI is revolutionizing the world. But I also recognize that those revolutions today are based on fundamental research that was invested in by the federal government decades ago. And so those early foundational research investments lead to innovations like we're experiencing today. And I couldn't believe in that any more than I do. So that's why I'm here, I think, to try to figure out how collectively we can make our science and technology enterprise work for the nation.
Lynne, thank you so much. I just met Tsu-Jae an hour ago, and spending just a few minutes talking with her, I realized why she is now the incoming president of the National Academy of Engineering. Yes. So please, Tsu-Jae, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So much, Kelvin, and good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see a packed house here. So I'm Tsu-Jae Liu. I'm a professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences at the University of California, Berkeley. There, my area of research is in semiconductor devices and technology, and a lot of my work has been funded, the basic research has been funded by the federal government. For example, the work for which I'm most well known is the co-invention of a transistor design that has actually enabled the chips that are the brains in every electronic device today. So your smartphones, computers, data centers, they all use this transistor design that was developed at Berkeley, supported by funding from DARPA. And so I've seen personally how fundamental research can lead to tremendous impact. In fact, there was an interesting tidbit of information. The number of transistors on a most advanced microprocessor chip has reached about 100 billion. There are hundreds of millions of these chips today produced, and over the last 10 years, these have included the transistors that I've talked about. So these fin-shaped transistors, there are more fin-shaped transistors that have been produced by companies in the world than the number of grains of sand in the world. So that just shows you the impact that you can have, and out of basic research funded by the federal government. So I've personally seen how research can lead to innovation with impact. And I'm here today because over the years I've had the pleasure of and privilege of serving on some boards of companies in the semiconductor industry. And a few years ago I started to realize these companies were all competing against each other, hiring talent from each other and paying higher and higher wages. And it dawned on me, we don't have enough talent to fill all the jobs, the good paying jobs that are available that will keep the United States at the forefront of technology, innovation and manufacturing. And so for the last 4 years, I've been working to promote collaboration across the country. This is a whole of nation effort. There's talent everywhere, but we're not giving opportunities to people everywhere. So my goal is to empower people where they're at by fostering collaboration so we can all help each other and lift each other up and fulfill the full potential of American talent in this country. And I'd be happy to talk about that more.
Very well said, Tsu-Jae. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. And last but not least, Michael Crow, one of the foremost innovators in higher education. But I want to say, Michael, thank you for giving us Punch to be director of NSF. Really appreciate that very much. You trained Punch well. You made him a great innovative thinker. He already was, but you took him to the next level. And so thank you for that. Welcome, Michael. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Kelvin. It's an honor to be here, an opportunity to get together. And let me change my volume here just a little bit. I'm getting feedback. Anyway, so I've been president here at Arizona State for 23 years. My objective, the thing that we're working on is, can you build a frontline combat level, if you will, a research university? Can you build it which is scalable, agile, flexible, adaptable? We've been working at this by changing everything, changing the design, changing the structure, changing the way that it works, changing the use of technology, changing the rate of innovation. A couple of areas that we've had some impact on. We just this year have 33,000 engineering students, 25,000 on campus, 8,000 online. First fully accredited undergraduate degrees in engineering. We have 10 or 11,000 biology majors, half online, half on campus. And we've done this by creating a culture of innovation. And then those innovations then have allowed us to grow the research performance of the institution to about $1 billion a year of research expenditures without a medical school, which means you can scale, you can adapt, you can plug into the democracy more broadly, you can be accessible, you can build ways to reach out and connect with people throughout the society. And so it's this new design that we're working on. I was, before coming here, I was 11 or 12 years the deputy provost at Columbia University, and my academic area is the design of knowledge enterprises. I spend a lot of time thinking about that. The reason that I'm here today is to be really a part of the like a fullback for Marcia as the quarterback, just sort of opening lines for what she sees as this central thing, which is 80 years of success from the design of Science the Endless Frontier, that we now need a new model, a new design, and most importantly, new structures in academia, new cultural trajectories, the introduction of technology, use of AI, and the breaking down of the Middle Ages. And now finally the release of all of the talent, all of the capability for the national goals and the national objectives. So I'm very much interested in anything that can be done to advance at this critical moment a new design for national success for the United States in science and technology.
Share an observation from Marcia's address this afternoon to think about, this rapidly changing landscape that we're in, and think about really what maybe stood out to you or what resonated with you, or perhaps even what surprised you. Was there something in there that really surprised you or concerned you in particular that you'd like to highlight among the many things that she showed? What was the thing that really kind of stood out to you? So let's start with you, Tsu-Jae, if we could, please.
Right, thanks very much, Kelvin. Well, I've been focusing on workforce development, so I really was resonated with Marcia's comments about the need for workforce development, and especially starting at the K through 12 level. So in my view, since I'm an engineer, I view science and technology, engineering is really the engine for innovation. It takes and so hopefully in the United States we have high octane fuel, which is scientific knowledge. We want to have access to that first so that we can use that to spur new innovations that will result in new impactful technologies that will benefit people in society. So I really resonated with that. And I think, if we think about it this way, maybe that can help to attract more students, because today, science and math and so on, it does take time and effort to memorize or to develop these skills. So why not show students, young people today, the impact of technologies on their life, and they realize, okay, well, engineers designed and built these technologies that you all have come to depend on, and then but to innovate new technologies, you actually have to have scientific knowledge and you have to develop math skills. Why don't we motivate students to study science and math and to excel in those, motivated by the desire? I mean, we are all creative, right? Humans. To empower us to be more creative and innovative to benefit people in society. So I'm thinking maybe that kind of a narrative might appeal more to K to 12 students nowadays. And I look forward, therefore, to partnering with the National Academy of Science and also with the National Academy of Medicine, just to see how we can partner together. I think that is one strength of the United States. There are national academies of science and of engineering in other countries around the world. But I think only the United States combines them all into one organization. I think we should leverage that and run faster and together rather than individually as science, engineering, and medicine.
Yeah, that's a really great point. As they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's a really, really great point. Heather, would you like to be next?
Yeah, a couple of things. First, the Australian study from 2023 that showed 37 out of 44 critical technologies, particularly for national security. I had seen that data before and I've written about it, but it's true. And that should concern all of us. While we're interested in science and engineering for its impact on the economy and on our health and infrastructure and all kinds of things, it is vital to the security of the nation. And we're behind in 37 of 44 critical technology areas. I would also say that one of the other things that struck me, and she may be trying to, navigate carefully here, is the inconsistency between the president's policy statements about ushering in a new age of a golden age of innovation and the proposal that went to Capitol Hill on the budget. It is now up to the Congress, and Article 1 of the Constitution is that the Congress shall appropriate. The president put forward some suggestions, but there is an inconsistency between the policy and the numbers. And now the Congress needs to step up and pursue the policy with sufficient budget to advance American science.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Michael, do you want to pick up from there, and then we'll turn to Lynn?
I think what I would add is, as Heather was just saying, I mean, it really is up to the people and their representatives to plot the course for the country. And what we've had is a very successful plot the last 80 years. What we need to do is recognize, to what Marcia had said earlier, that we lost touch with the people. That is, the scientists and academia lost touch with the people. We need to think about everything that we can do to communicate better, to explain what we're doing, to explain the role of the invisible hand of science, the thousands of academic inventions and patents and papers that are in the iPhone technology portfolio, et cetera. What we have to do is we have to find a way to reconnect, and we also have to find a way to speed all of our processes in the way that Marcia was talking about. And so the goal here needs to be one of continuous innovation and change, including in the structures. So does the National Science Foundation's best structure really mean to mirror academia? Or should the National Science Foundation articulate its specific objectives relative to areas of technological and scientific success critical to the success of the country going forward? So we need to be looking at a design level for all things.
Great, Michael, thank you. I'd like to come back to that point in a moment with regard to how we really do re-engage with the public, because in some sense, our own success has been the problem in the sense that we're so successful at research and innovation. We create these things that make life so much easier and give us so much access to information for making decisions that you begin to take it for granted. And usually it's a major crisis that, in fact, I think Dario Gil in his Connected Horizons report talked about. If you look at the budget changes that happened, they were crisis points. And we don't want to have a crisis, a pandemic or something like that, to where we really help the public understand the continuous value of research and innovation, which is something that we do extremely well. And China is now working hard to do much more innovation. And that's not something they've traditionally been strong in, but now that is beginning to change. So we'll come back to that if we could. But let me turn to Lynne now and ask you, Lynne, to reflect on the presentation, if you would.
Sure, thank you. So I think Marcia made a great case for how our current scientific enterprise is not working well, in the sense that the trends that we're seeing in terms of comparisons that she made are not trends that just happened in the last 6 months. These are trends that have been going on for years. And so it's clear that now is the time for us to rethink our scientific enterprise writ large. And I think she brings up a number of important points. I love the idea as well that Michael brought up as well, of using our innovation that the nation has been so good at to be innovative in our scientific enterprise. I think we have to, it's an opportunity now like we've never had before to rethink how we've been doing things, because if you look at education, for instance, it has not been working in terms of attracting our young people to science and engineering and mathematics and technology careers. And so we need to rethink that. And I think now is the best time to do that. To use our innovative mindset to figure out how to solve the problem, to dig into the education issues that clearly have plagued our country for years. And so I think this is an important time for us to address these challenges, for us to work together to figure out how we can make the scientific enterprise better. I very much appreciate the recognition that regulations have not worked for the scientific enterprise in terms of enabling people to do science. We need scientists to get back to doing science and not all of the regulatory burdens. I know, Kelvin, you're leading an effort to try to figure out how we can address administrative burdens and research burdens, and I think that's very important. So overall, I think Marcia made a beautiful case for how we now need to revisit our scientific enterprise that has trended in a negative direction for many, many, many years.
I think you make a really great point that there are opportunities now. Sometimes you need certain forcing functions to make things happen, and I think some of those forcing functions are there that are compelling us to really rethink things. And I can tell you that back in 1987, when I co-founded one of the first NSF Science Technology Centers, the solicitation from NSF was 4 pages long. Today it's 25. And that will give you a sense of all the additional things that get added on. And, you know, you have to argue, is that science? As you said, Lynn, let's focus on doing the science. Not that those other things aren't important, but does everyone have to be doing them? Or perhaps could we not think of a better way to do it? So I think this kind of notion of rethinking is important. I'd like to kind of pull that thread just a little bit in the next question, because Marcia talked about, and I love the fact how she went from the Rising Above the Gathering Storm, which was an extraordinarily valuable and important report. Norm Augustine led that with other people, but Norm was really one of the main drivers of that. And kind of revisiting that and thinking about it. And this business as usual approach is now kind of shifted into the pessimistic scenario. So there's this awakening that's clearly happening. And so regarding the things that we've been talking about, what Michael brought up with regard to reconnecting with the idea of the workforce and things like, you know, being innovative, not just in our research, but using the innovative concepts to rethink how we actually do things. I'd like to hear your thoughts about that. If you feel like we really have shifted into this paradigm of this very pessimistic scenario, which we don't want folks to walk out of here thinking, oh my God, it's all doom and gloom going forward. The doom and gloom, I think, is the best opportunity to do really, really exciting, forward-thinking things. And that's what I think that's what researchers do, right? They take a big challenge and they go fix it. They innovate. That's really what we've always been about in America. So we have this huge opportunity. So maybe, Lynne, starting with you to kind of continue and pulling that thread with what you were talking about, what do you think we could do to apply that innovative notion to move from this pessimistic scenario in the opposite direction? What would you suggest?
Well, and I would slightly maybe argue with the premise. I'm not as pessimistic. It's true if you pick, certainly metrics matter, and the metrics that Marcia shared with us absolutely matter. But I think there are other metrics as well in terms of the innovation enterprise that we have in the United States that does start with research. And if you look at my area is AI, if you look at AI in terms of the United States is leading the world in high-end AI models and the design of AI chips, in cloud, in AI applications. And yes, there is competition, but nevertheless, the world desires the technology that the United States has built in this space. So I think despite the trends that we saw that Marcia presented, those have still resulted in lots of innovations. And it's not just in AI. If you think of, commercial space enterprise or other kinds of advances that have translated from the lab into actual application, the United States still is a world leader in so many areas. So it doesn't mean that even though some areas clearly are on the downward trend, we shouldn't be surprised that other countries recognize the advantages of being a strong innovation system, of investing in research, and that other nations are also wanting to invest similarly. So I think it might be not feasible to think that the U.S. would maintain its share of, say, the scientific investments, given that other countries are recognizing the importance of scientific investments as well. But with all that said, I think, we've touched on a number of things here that I think can innovate the ecosystem, but we certainly want to work with scientists to figure these things out. We've already touched on things like making sure that people are getting back to science and not having to do these other activities or getting sidetracked in other kinds of activities. So certainly it's been mentioned the gold standard science, but that the administration the president signed an executive order on that. And that's really about getting scientists back to doing science. That's really kind of the bottom line there. And so I think figuring out how best that we can enable all of these good ideas that have been circulated here with Marcia's talk about education in particular, as well as reducing administrative burdens and so forth, are a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Heather, you produce a lot of engineers at UTEP, and engineers solve problems. So what would you offer in terms of things that we could do to innovate in the structure of what we do as well as the research?
Yeah, obviously, I've mentioned that the Congress needs to step up, but I think there are other things as well. Just as a couple of examples, deeper partnerships between the federal government and the states. The number one funder of cancer research in America is the National Institutes of Health. Number two is the state of Texas. Over $6 billion in cancer research over the last decade. So states can step up as well in deepening those partnerships. You mentioned deregulation. I just sat, I'm a university president, have been for 10 years, 2 different universities. I just sat with my internal audit and compliance person on the risks for the next year and what they're going to do for audits. 20 pages of lists of compliance items, almost all of them from the federal government. When I was the Secretary of the Air Force, one of the things I noticed when I came in was we had over 1,400 mandatory Air Force instructions and regulations. We had a mandatory instruction on how to build an obstacle course. And I think if people in Arizona needed to build an obstacle course, President Crow, you can figure it out, right?
Some students would call that a graduate curriculum. Typically,
I rescinded 340 regulations and rewrote 500 more.
Oh my gosh!
But you didn't hear about that because we did it the right way. with care and the involvement of the people affected. And it was wildly popular within the Air Force. We need to do the same thing. We are overruled as a society and as a scientific enterprise. So we need to do that. And the final thing is, Dr. McNutt, you talked about international students. And I think we still need to be the magnet for the best and the brightest from around the world. But I also think we are not connecting and inspiring the next generation of young Americans from all over the United States either, and supporting them. 16,000 young people applied for the Graduate Research Fellowship by the National Science Foundation last year. Only 1,000 were funded. Only 1,000 were funded. We have tremendous talent here in this country, but we need to give them the opportunity to pursue science and engineering, and we need them desperately. So I think we need to widen that pathway and inspire the next generation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I kind of draw an analogy with the, having been in Oklahoma for almost 40 years, draw an analogy with the exploration of natural resources, oil and gas and things like that. Number one, you have to go find out where it's at. Number two, you have to extract it. It doesn't come to you automatically. Number three, once you get it, you've got to refine it. I think the same is true for talent. There's amazing talent in all corners of this country that goes unharvested, unaccessed, uneducated in the sense of, they're not uneducated, but in the way that we're talking about with a skilled technical workforce and other things, and then, help them, build their career and pathway. And so we need to be mining. You're a miner. Your little logo is a mining. We got to mine for that talent and bring it in. It's not going to come automatically. We've got to go out and be determined and intentional about how we actually do that. So that's certainly something we have to do. Let's go to, do you want to follow that?
Yeah, I fully agree with everything that's been said.
Okay.
Once we inspire and motivate students to pursue STEM, they have to be supported because it's a difficult curriculum, and they need financial support. They also need mentorship. We can collaborate with industry and maybe offer them some apprenticeships, give them, it turns out hands-on learning experiences can also help to inspire and motivate students once they see that, there's some real impact that they can have in society. I also appreciate Dr. McNutt's focus, or one of the points about international partnerships. As technology has advanced, the sophistication of the technologies, the devices that we use even for advancing scientific discovery has grown. And so the cost of supporting research has grown as well. So we might as well leverage investments around the world with our allies, like-minded governments to really pool resources and facilitate collaboration across countries. I think it's also important for our students to develop multicultural competency, and to, when we work together in teams toward a common goal to solve some problems, some difficult problems, or discover new knowledge and apply that knowledge, we also build relationships. So as the young people today, they work with each other, they learn about each other's cultures, they gain soft skills and some kind of understanding, so that in the future, when they go off and become leaders in our nations, in our states, hopefully people will be more collaborative and willing to see that we all live in the same global society. And so we won't see as much, kind of negative kind of effects of competition, global competition. So I think there's a lot of value in international partnerships. And we just have to make sure that the work that, the investments of the American taxpayer dollars are truly to benefit ultimately the nation. But that doesn't mean we can't benefit the world at the same time.
Right, exactly. No, that's a very, very good point, Tsu-Jae. Michael, turn it over to you now.
Yeah, what I would add to this, Kelvin, is the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I think that's absolutely true. And in particular, academic culture, which is more rigid than most areas of cultural evolution. And so what we have is a very strong need, an unbelievable need for an update in academic culture. We need more speed, we need more agility, we need better communication, we need different ways to think about risk-taking. We need different ways to think about setting goals. Perhaps the goals are scientific as a part of the process, but the goals are ultimately different than that in terms of what we're actually working toward. And so what I would argue for us to be able to achieve what Marcia articulated as innovate the Endless Frontier 2.0, to get that started, we've got to start with academic culture. It's going to be extremely difficult, extremely challenging. I've been at this for more than a couple of decades here. We've eliminated 85 academic units, departments, and schools, built 40 transdisciplinary schools and centers, and saw tremendous change coming from those things, saw that you could both scale and be research intensive at the same time. And so it's all about culture at the end of the day, and we need academic culture to accelerate its innovation to get this endless frontier continuation that we've experienced the last 80 years. The existing culture isn't going to work.
Michael, well said. And you know, you've been talking about this for a long time in the books you've written and so on. What do you think are the greatest obstacles to achieving that transformative change within academia? Because I think you're right. That's the foundation. And if we don't really start with the foundation, the rest of it becomes ever more difficult. So
my own view is that the goals set out by Vannevar Bush and Science of the Endless Frontier are too generic. They should be the macro level goals, the supra goals. But what does the nation need us to do now relative to economic competitiveness and economic security? Relative to health outcomes, it can't just be more science, more science, more science when we have one of the most ineffective healthcare systems in the world in terms of cost per unit of positive outcome across the population. We need to find ways to broaden the goals. We need to make sure that every project that we're working on, whether it's a math project at NSF working on topological geometry that helps you to understand vortices of combusting stars or whatever it is, you're working towards some goal. The goal can be fundamental understanding, but fundamental understanding for what? What does the democracy need the science to do? And so what we need is more specificity of goals. What we need is more willingness to have differentiated cultures. What we need is more differentiated universities. We don't need universities all competing just against each other, trying to do the same thing. How about broadening the aperture completely by changing the whole nature of the culture and the contest itself?
Mm-hmm. Very, very well said. That's absolutely fantastic. We've talked a lot about science and technology. Marcia showed slides that in many cases were troubling about how things have changed over the last 20 years or so. But, you know, science technology is one piece of it. There's another piece that underlies that, and that is one of the major forces that really shapes our science and engineering and research enterprise and education enterprise in this country that's uniquely American is our values. And, you know, the values are, you know, free inquiry, openness, collaboration, respect, that sort of thing, fairness, you know, honesty, integrity, those kinds of things are just foundational to how we do things. And so, you know, one of the things that you have to think about when you look at what Marcia showed and you look at the technological lead and realize that not only do we lead with those technological capabilities, but we also lead with our values. So one of the things that we did when we were at the White House, Lynne and I and Michael Kratsios, we worked on international protocols and standards for things like the ethical use of artificial intelligence. AI itself is so incredibly wonderful, but if we cede the leadership to others who don't share our values, then when it comes to setting those international principles, fundamental principles for the use of these kinds of technologies, we're not at the table. And that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. So in that sense, in that context, I'd like the panelists to talk about, and let's start with Michael if we could. The current state of the system that we have is really in flux. And you think about our role globally, as Marcia talked about, in science, engineering, technology, and what do you see as being some of the key things that really support those values, to make sure that those values can be promoted, not only here at home, which we need to do more of that as well, but also internationally? What factors and actions you think, Michael, beginning with you, would really best position us to stay in that strong leadership position, not just with technology and science capabilities, but also with our values to help us play that important leadership role?
Well, I mean, for one thing, Kelvin, we have to be willing to talk about them. We have to be able to talk about them up front. What are these values? What are the classic American, iconoclastic American values that we want to protect in terms of being this emergent democracy that we are? So we have a thing at ASU. We have 9 design aspirations. One of them is called practice principled innovation. And what we mean by that is that we're very much bought into the logic of Philip Kitcher, the famous American philosopher of science, who talks about the fact that science in a democracy has to be grounded in what the democracy wants to achieve, or it has no moral basis. Well, that's true. And there's perhaps some people that don't necessarily want to have that kind of conversation. So the first thing that we have to have is, you know, what are these values? We have to agree to what these values are, at least in generalities, and then we have to work toward them and protect them in the hope that our science helps the democracy to be more successful. And Phil Kitcher really laid that out in his book, Science, Truth, and Democracy, which I think is fantastic if you all haven't had a chance to look at it.
That's really important, and the point about the science reinforcing the democracy, which is the foundation of the science itself. I love that. I think that's terrific. Tsu-Jae, what are your thoughts?
Fully agree with Michael. So it's ironic that with advances in technology, if we don't maintain a technological leadership, our democracy is ultimately at risk. It's an existential threat. So I do agree that we are at a Sputnik moment. I call it the new space race, near Earth orbit, neo space race, because any country that's dominating in space between Earth and the moon is going to essentially dominate the world. If you can see and monitor and take intelligence from anywhere in the world, anytime, you have an economic and military advantage. But also, we're talking about cyberspace race as well. So we need to be ahead technologically in cyberspace and in cislunar space. But I do fully agree that we have to leverage our technology to run faster, right? This is the law of accelerating returns. And I think there's still hope. I mean, yes, a pessimistic scenario. I think there's a strong case to be made that we're in that scenario. But I think one thing in Americans, we have hope, right? We're optimistic. We can innovate and make the world a better place. And so I still think it's worth fighting for sure.
Thank you. Heather, you, former member of Congress, Secretary of the Air Force, you thought a lot about values and have thought a lot about values in your career. What are your thoughts?
I would say that the moral authority of science depends on the pursuit of truth. And that means resisting the temptation the National Academies plays a really important role in this city and this country. Really, and the Institute of Medicine do. This is the institution we often turn to for difficult problems for that outside, highly technical view, to find the truth. It's really important right now to resist the temptation to respond to the politicization of elements of one part of American politics with politicization on the extremes of another side of American politics. Now, I think it's actually wrong. It was wrong for the American Federation of Teachers to get involved and try to rewrite the Centers for Disease Control's guidance on COVID. That was wrong and undermined the legitimacy of the science behind that guidance. It is equally wrong or inappropriate to cancel research on genetics and disease because that research is related to differences, racial differences in disease. The University of Texas at Houston had a grant canceled that was related to Alzheimer's and dementia and how it presents differently among Hispanics, Anglos, Blacks, and Americans. That's the genetics of disease. This is science. And there are differences between, triple-negative breast cancers disproportionately affects Mexican Americans. That's not woke science, that's genetics. So I think it's particularly important for the National Academies to do as you have done since Lincoln was president, is to continue to stand up and pursue the truth through deep analysis of the facts and the data.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So, Lynn, when we talk about, ethics and values, you were at the sort of the center of that with AI, biotech, with quantum. All these sorts of things have those kinds of dimensions. And I just have to say that very pleased and happy that you and Michael are there dealing with these things, because I know that it's from a policy perspective, from a national and international perspective, these things are very much front and center in the work that you do. So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this point.
Sure, and I think I'm going to answer the question by being specific. I think since I do a lot of AI policy, I think if you look at technology, as you were saying, the world is obviously adopting technology across the board, particularly AI technologies. And I think the way the United States can certainly make sure that the world is using technology that's consistent with our democracy is for American industry to have the opportunity to have those technologies used around the world. I think if you think of how our adversary is using technologies like AI, they're using it in ways that none of us wants. None of us wants to be surveilled or our ideas squashed through technology. And so I think by having a pro-innovation approach to how we do technology, by making sure that the rest of the world can also benefit from the technologies that we develop, is one of the best ways that we can help make sure that the values that we believe in as Americans building these technologies can be used by the rest of the world, and they won't be having to go with technologies developed by the adversary that could be used in ways that we don't want them used. So I think running fast with our innovation, making sure that it's developed, we're good examples as Americans, how we build our technologies in ways that we believe in, that reflect our values, and making sure that helping ensure that the rest of the world has the opportunity to use those technologies as well.
Yeah, that's really, really great response. Let's turn a little bit to workforce and education. And Tsu-Jae, I'd like to start with you because you've talked about this in your opening comments. Of course, Marcia mentioned the National Defense Education Act 2.0 and the fact that historically we as a nation have benefited dramatically from what happened, following World War II and Sputnik and so on. And it's not just about masters and PhDs, it's about the skilled technical workforce. And I think the National Science Board put a really beautiful point on this when they said, talent is the treasure. I love that phrase. Talent is the treasure. And so with regard to, and Marcia offered several ideas, but Tsu-Jae, maybe beginning with you and then going to Michael, what things would you offer in terms of really doubling down on this notion of a major initiative nationally to build our domestic workforce?
All right, so national defense education. So I think it's really interesting that the defense is in the title. So it's really trying to unify people across the nation towards a common goal, like to defend our nation, the way, our values, the way of life. So I think that's a unifying theme that we should capitalize on and try to avoid the politicization of science and engineering technology. But I do think that there are opportunities. I mean, crisis is a time, like, we don't want it to go to waste. So we want to work efficiently, more quickly. We need to foster collaboration. Universities here, it's wonderful to have other public universities here. We've all been kind of focusing more on how well we can succeed in educating and making sure our students go on to productive lives. But why don't we help each other more across the country? One statistic is the average, the graduation rate for students who enter an engineering degree program, it's the rate of graduation is less than 45% average across the country. Now, like there's like a leaky pipeline. At some schools, I'm sure ASU, UTEP, and at Berkeley, the graduation rate is higher. So why can't we share best practice and help other schools in other states do better? That way, if we all benefit somehow from being part of this great nation. So why don't we work together to help each other to solve this problem? It's a challenge, and it's a race. We have to work quickly. We can't just take our time. So we might as well share best practices, curricula, including an AI. How can we adopt AI to help students learn? Students from a variety of backgrounds learn more quickly. How can we educate the educators? Like if somebody has developed something that works really well at ASU, online education, or at UTEP, reaching a greater diversity of students from underserved backgrounds, why don't we share that and empower everybody to help contribute to our nation's workforce needs?
I think that's a great point. Yeah. We truly are an education ecosystem, and really there is strength in numbers and we can all benefit. I know that some of the smaller institutions, when they work with the larger institutions learn as much from them as the smaller institutions learn from the larger. And so it's this wonderful synergy. Michael, I'm sure you have nothing at all to say about this, but let's see if there's something in there that you could comment on.
Well, I mean, I think this notion of expansion of the domestic workforce to meet the challenge that lies ahead and to create more opportunities for people as technologies become, very displacement oriented, in terms of workforce, calls for what I call the Americanization of the system a little bit more, less British, less elitist, less focused on selectivity prior to entrance as the measurement of success or quality, and then the measurement of outcomes as the goal. We've gone from about 10,000 STEM majors to just under 70,000 STEM majors. And we've done that by building personalized learning tools, by weeding out the weed out culture, by eliminating the weed out culture, by focusing on this abundance theory, this notion of everyone that wants to be a STEM major can become a STEM major if they're given the right pathways, if they're given the right tutorials, if they're given the right AI agentic assistant. And what we found in our, substantial increase in, let's just take engineering, we've gone from 900 graduates in engineering to more than 7,000 in engineering. And we've done that with people who in the past thought they couldn't be engineers. And it goes back all the way to Chuck Vest asking us to rethink engineering education when he was president of the National Academy. It goes back to rethinking everything and connecting with all learners. And what I mean by Americanizing, it means respecting all pathways, facilitating other pathways, expecting a B student from high school that could grow to be a fantastic scientist, all these kinds of things. And that means just breaking down the system a little bit and Americanizing it through innovation.
Instead of personalized medicine, you're really talking about personalized education in a very different way, right?
Yeah, we found that to be the case. We found that, we built some new ways to teach biology, which now allows us to have 5 times as many biology majors as we used to have, because now that many people that wanted to study biology can study biology because we found personalized pathways for them to be able to really enhance their learning outcomes. And so it's really using technology, using innovation. Many more people want to work in these areas that are so critical to the success of our country than our system has been allowed to provide. Because it used to be to become an engineering student, maybe you had to have an SAT score in math of 720 or 750. Well, it turns out you can have an SAT score of 600 and become a fantastic engineer. You can maybe not have graduated from high school and still become a fantastic engineer if you find the right kind of learning pathway for you.
Yeah, treating people as individuals and realizing that there's a great heterogeneity and it's one of the strengths of our country. Heather.
Totally.
A couple of things. One is that one of the centerpieces of the original National Defense Education Act was K-12 teachers. And if I have a choice between the best equipped school, between the best equipped school ever and a fantastic teacher standing under a cottonwood tree, for my kids and grandkids, I choose a great teacher under the cottonwood tree. So I think that's the high leverage, is focusing on K-12 teachers, particularly elementary school, because all of us know a lot of people go into elementary education because they don't like math and science, right? And so how do we engage? Because enthusiasm for a subject is caught, it's not taught, and that once you spark that curiosity in children, there's almost nothing you can do to stop it. The second thing I would say is that as much as it pains me to say this, Michael Crow is right. He and I are actually very good friends, and our institutions are similar. That the University of Texas at El Paso is an R1 research university, not nearly as large as Arizona State, but we're in the 150 largest research institutions in the country. We are the only one, including ASU, who's close, but not quite, the only one that admits 100% of high school graduates who apply. My university is 96% minority. Half of my students are the first in their families to go to college. 78% of my students are on some kind of scholarship. 28% of my students come from families making less than $20,000 a year. Over 5,000 engineering students at the University of Texas at El Paso. And by the way, we've never had a DEI office, but we have most of the results that those who advocate for DEI say they want. We meet each student where they are, build on their strengths, and help them to become better versions of themselves. The biggest challenge we are facing, and it has to be addressed by this Congress whether or not there's a defense author, a new National Defense Education Act, is what the changes proposed to Pell will do to students like mine and students like Michael's. The Congress was reacting to a problem that was created with the FAFSA Simplification Act. They didn't anticipate a significant expansion in demand for Pell, and now they're trying to unwind that, but they're doing it in a way that's misguided. By saying that every student has to take 15 credit hours per semester, 64% of my students are working more than 20 hours a week to put food on the table. Yep. That's not an option for them. And we need to, I understand the budget issues. We're not going to solve the budget issues in the back of science, by the way. You put the budgets together of NASA, DOE, science, NSF, and NIH, and you don't even get to half the budget of the United States Air Force. And I am the #1 proponent on this stage in the United States Air Force. But that's not going to solve the budget problem. We're going to have to address Pell in a different way, and there are better options. There actually are better ways to do this, and I think there's a group of people who are willing to work with the United States Senate to craft a better bill when it comes to Pell.
Great, thank you. Lynn, I know please, go ahead. Go ahead. I know workforce is not at all on your mind with regard to AI and quantum, but I'll try to tease something out of you here. What are your thoughts about the future in NDEA 2.0 or something like that?
Well, I think just broadly speaking, we all agree K through 12 education needs more attention. And the challenge, I think, is that our young people are not inspired to enter these science and technology areas and engineering because we don't have enough people actually going into those areas. And so we're trying to do our part to inspire students through the AI Education Executive Order, which establishes a presidential AI challenge for the whole nation. It's intended to be across the entire geography of the United States. It's intended to involve students that are interested in any topic. And, so it kind of addresses a couple of issues at the same time. One issue, of course, is many people are concerned about what AI means for the future of the workforce. And so preparing people quickly for AI-enabled jobs of the future is an important thing to do. And so this presidential AI challenge is designed to do that. It's also designed to inspire students to recognize amazing things that they could do on a scientific or technical career by using cutting-edge technology that people are fascinated by. And so if we can inspire students to enter these kinds of areas, it's not just AI, but because AI touches every economic sector, probably every job, we think it's an amazing area to try to do exactly that. And we encourage all of you here and those listening to partner with us in helping us to make this challenge achieve these goals that it seems that we all agree with. We want to have our K through 12 children to be much more knowledgeable about science and technology, engineering, mathematics, and to enter the workforce in these areas. And so I think this is one step toward that end, and we certainly encourage other kinds of activities like this that can inspire our students to be ready for these jobs of the future.
Well, that's really great. And you make a great point that it's not just about developing the workforce to do AI and innovate AI, but it's the workforce who is going to actually use AI in a productive way. And she makes a really important point about OSTP. Lots of folks visit OSTP to talk about what they're doing and stuff, which is wonderful. But she just said OSTP invites all of us to come and help them. And I think that's such a really wonderful point that, hey, contact Lynn, contact whoever, Chief of Staff Elena Hernandez, whoever. They're willing to take ideas, and they really need workers to help achieve this agenda. So thank you for that, Lynn. I think that's really important. We're going to do a little magic right now and give each of our panelists a magic wand. And they're going to be able to wave this wand and tell us about one key thing, if they could have their wish and then wave the magic wand to really address some of the challenges that we've talked about here today. What would that look like? If you could have your way with one thing only and you had that magic wand, what would it be? Let's start with you, Heather.
So I've already mentioned a couple of things, but there's something we haven't talked about, and that is the potential for scientific and technical surprise, which is higher today than at any time since the Second World War. And I served in the House Intelligence Committee overseeing the scientific enterprise for the Intelligence Committee. I was the subcommittee chair for several years, and we're at significant threat. And I think we have 18 intelligence agencies. All of them agree that we need some kind of capability, but none of them have it as their job. We need an intelligence agency that scans the horizon for scientific and technical breakthroughs. 3 million patents every year, 7,000 scientific and technical papers published every day. And what would have happened if it had not been the United States and Britain that had invented sonar and radar in the Second World War? We probably would have lost the Battle of the Atlantic before we were able to save Britain. These are major national security issues, and our intelligence community is not currently organized to monitor that threat.
Great, thank you. Michael, let's go to you next. Your magic wand, your virtual
Yeah,
wand.
I like Heather's idea, by the way, but just adding another idea, I would say that the magic wand would be to set broader goals that are beyond the scientific and technological academic goals. That is, let's take NIH. If NIH can't become masters of all things that we need to know scientifically, but then also produce technologies that are affordable out of those scientific discoveries, that then also lead to better health outcomes at a lower cost, then what are we doing? So we have a disconnected set of objectives. So my magic wand would be to tie these things together, to tie the ultimate goal together of health security and health outcomes to the scientific goals in ways where it doesn't affect the design of an individual project, but there's a connection, there's a thread, there's a knitting together of all these things that would give us an opportunity to measure our success against why we're doing this for the democracy. So my magic wand would be to set broader goals on the social scale.
I think that's really great, Michael. And yeah. Because it really connects the fundamental curiosity-driven research with the values for democracy, the societal benefit, and we oftentimes do not see that connection, but this becomes sort of an automatic part of that. So thank you for that. That's very, very helpful. Tsu-Jae, and then we'll give Lynn the last word.
All right. Well, I was also struck by some comments that Dr. McNutt made about how we have made some unforced errors in the past. So I think one example of that would be negative stereotypes of scientists and especially engineers in the media and so on. If we don't if we don't change the image or the stereotype of engineers, then we're just hurting ourselves. So I think that's one thing I hope that we can all work together, is that engineers do actually add value to society. We advance technology for the benefit of humanity. We apply scientific knowledge to develop new innovations. Like, why do we have to think like scientists making fun of engineers or vice versa? I think that if I could raise a magic wand, that's negative stereotype would go away, and we would all appreciate engineering and science and medicine, and our parents in the country would be happy to have their students just as happy as them going to become scientists or doctors or engineers.
Very good. Okay, Lynn, you have the last word.
Last word. If I had a magic wand, I think I would solve the Valley of Death for research. Most of people outside our community in the United States probably do not realize the impact that science has on their lives. And a lot of the reason is that there is a disconnect between what's happening in the research labs and the transition of that to something in someone's life that they actually appreciate is due to science. And a lot of that is the valley of death, that we can't get things out of the labs into positive impacts for the American people, for the world. And so I think that would be my magic wand solution, is to figure out how to get things, great ideas, great innovations out of the lab and into practice so that we can all benefit from them.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we started the panel session with me saying that this is a fantastic panel. Was I wrong? We're so blessed to have you all here, and thank you for joining us in person. Those of you online, we applaud you too for taking a couple of hours out of your day. Thank you so much for that. Marcia, I hope this really met your expectations and hopefully exceeded them. And I want to thank Marcia, preparing this sort of thing and being thoughtful about how thousands of people are going to react to the words you say. It's not an easy task, and I know of no one better than Marcia McNutt to do that. So really, I'm so grateful to her, for the National Academies, their leadership, and for all of you, again, taking your time to join us here. For those of you who are here in the beautiful Kavli Auditorium, a gorgeous place, we invite you to continue the conversation, continue discussing it, come up and don't let these people have a drink later on. You're just going to barrage them here. But we do invite you to the reception out in the Great Hall. It's going to be a wonderful time for us to just continue fellowshipping and sharing our thoughts and ideas. The last thing we want to see happen is this wonderful exchange just stop here. We want to go forward with some actionable activities, things that we're working on. The National Academies is working on the 6-month fast track study on reducing administrative burden. There's a lot of work going on. You're all a part of that. We're all part of the same community. So let's go be active. Let's take these words that we've heard today, the wisdom that's been shared with us, and let's go make this place, this beautiful country we have. Let's go make our science and engineering research enterprise as strong as it can possibly be. Let's address these challenges. We know what they are. We know we've got a pathway towards solutions. So let's go do the work that needs to be done. So thank you all so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.